it's pretty safe to say that today's culture isn't doing a great job at raising our next generation of leaders. And I think one of the biggest lies that our young men and our young women are being fed, but especially our young men, are being fed is that you shouldn't have to wait until marriage in order to have sex. As long as you're both consenting, sex is not only perfectly fine, but it's actually encouraged by our education system, and they're going to teach you all about it. But luckily, there are some people out there that are refuting this lie and doing everything they can to educate people on it. And joining me live via streaming in Baltimore, Maryland is author of Why Waiting Works, Mr. Rob Kowalski, today on the 306 podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Scott, and welcome to the 306 podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I would really enjoy it. Become a local here in our neighborhood and see all the content that we have. Recently, we've been putting together more and more content that's geared towards developing leaders, and that's really exciting. And I'm so glad to be joined here today by the author of an upcoming book, Why Waiting Works, Mr. Rob Kowalski. Thank you for joining us, Rob.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
So I guess the first question would be culture. This seems to fly right in the face of culture. Waiting for marriage, that's a sticky thing, not cool or not trendy. So why write this book?
Well, for me, I really lived at polar ends of the spectrum. I had a lot of sex, and I've been abstinent for long periods. So I've come to understand some things, and I honestly believe that I can explain practically why it's in your best interest to wait, maybe better than anyone in the world, because I don't think that there's anyone that's lived at such extremes. So I wanted to kind of, I'm writing the book to obviously put it out there to help people, maybe gain a better understanding of something that I didn't understand in the least when I started, and ultimately help them avoid some pain and wasted time.
I mean, it's out there that there's a lot of different of these self-help books, but yours is different. You kind of take a different angle. Do you want to kind of elaborate on how your book, Why Waiting Works, is different than some of these other books on abstinence or waiting until marriage?
Well, I really approach it from a very practical standpoint. Every other book that I've read on the subject is really kind of is very biblical, or the Bible says so, breaking a commandment or whatever. I again approach it just from real life experiences that I've went through, and it's so practical why it makes sense to wait, and I break it down for people that it's almost like you can't even dispute it when you hear it. And I've been at several podcasts and debates about the subject, and it's almost like it would be like saying exercise isn't good for you or dieting doesn't make you thinner. It's that ridiculous to try to argue it.
Yeah.
At least with me, because again, I've lived at polar ends of the spectrum, so I really understand it.
Yeah. In the book, I mean, you talk about the essence of delayed gratification, and can you share a little bit about the theory behind that and why it makes it so much better in the long run to delay something that you may get pleasure out of now, but it's very short term, versus
Exactly.
that long scope, that long view of waiting.
Right. Well, there's several things I could say about that. I mean, everyone believes in delayed gratification, in just about every other area of life. We know that with exercise, you can't eat whatever you want when you want. If you want to buy a house, you have to save money and deprive yourself of things that you may want to buy in the moment. Sex is the one thing that we want to put our hands over our ears and pretend like it's not true. Well, unfortunately, it is. And what I tell people is think about it. Name one thing in the world where instant gratification produces long-term happiness, and people can't name one. There really isn't
Right.
anything. And to me, it's like, imagine going to the grocery store when you're hungry. If you grab the first thing, usually in the grocery store I shop at, it's the chips, right?
Yep.
So I could grab a bag of chips if I'm hungry, and guess what? I'm going to look at those bag of chips later and go, damn it, I shouldn't have grabbed those chips because now I don't want them. I
Right.
really wanted to go to the pot roast and the vegetables, but it was way back in the grocery store, and I didn't have the patience to get back there. You know what I mean? It's like that. But again, we don't think it all the way through. We think we're going to be the exception to the rule,
Yeah.
and we're going to find Mrs. Right, at the bar 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And it usually just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So, and those are all great points. I mean, and there's definitely a psychology as to why the grocery stores will put the chips and the cookies in the front and make you walk to the back. But I mean, so what's your goal with this book? How does this book change how, especially young people, view relationships? I mean, because it doesn't quite sound like fun anymore.
Yeah.
If you put it the way that you think it should be.
Well, it's more fun. I mean, here's the deal. I do say it's very practical, but I have to put a Christian perspective on it because I'm a believer. The Bible says no discipline is pleasant at the time. It's painful.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, however, it yields a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who are trained by it. So when you think about that, later comes, we don't want to think about that. The punchline to instant gratification is Charlie Sheen. Do you think he's having fun right now? Because I would say no, he's not having fun.
Right.
He had fun in some moments, but he's not having fun right now. So I don't want short-term fun. I want long-term happiness. And that's what this perspective provides. It just forces you to play the tape all the way through so that when you get to later in life, you can set yourself up for a place where you're happy. Because I think everyone that listens to this podcast would agree that they want a best friend that you're sexually attracted to. Who doesn't want that?
Right.
I mean, I would want somebody that I love hanging out with, that I also like to sleep with. I mean, wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? But what happens is we take the bait, what I call the sex trap. You end up having sex with someone early, and then you get attached to someone that you're not deeply connected to. And then guess what? How many times have you heard this, the sex stops after you get married? I've heard that all the time from married people. And I'm like, no wonder, it's because you did it ass backward. You had the sex first, and now you got married to the wrong person. And then it's like the trick that the universe played on us, or God, where now you don't even want the sex because you got with the wrong person. And you could waste your whole life with the wrong person because you wanted some sex early.
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at our culture today, we talk a lot about culture on this podcast particularly. And what we're seeing in schools is where they're introducing sex at such a young age. The kids are just enamored by it, and they're pretty much saying, as long as you're both consensual,
yeah,
sex is fine. It doesn't need to wait. That's a religious thing, and no one believes in that anyways. I mean, and so how this is a tough battle, that Christians have in particular, in working this angle.
Yeah.
So how do you see getting this into culture and letting it stick?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops because I feel like I'm a whistleblower.
Yeah.
I was the fat guy that's telling you, you can't run up the stairs, and I know
Right.
how you're out of breath every time you take 10. Like, I can tell you all the reasons it's not working for you, and I'm going to do that. And if I have to shove it down people's throat, I'm going to do it. But I'm not a religious guy. I mean, like, you look at, I got tattoos all over. I'm not, but I can, again, I've lived that life, and I know all the reasons that it's not working. I know that we're in an uphill battle. The culture is so prevalent, but even the school systems, like you said, it's like it's almost idiotic. We see kids or, teenagers, single parents having babies, STDs, all the consequences that come with it. Yet we don't put two and two together to realize
Right.
that this is what we're teaching people, or even the music that's being played on the radio that just, pushes kids into that lifestyle. I mean, it's time for people to really wake up. And, I think about a quote I heard Will Smith quote. I think it was Buddha. And he said, every day the good man tries to empty the ocean with a ladle. So,
Right.
Right now we have a ladle, and we're trying to empty the ocean. But I do believe that if enough of us speak up about it and, educate people really, which is what I'm trying to do, by making it such a practical thing to make people think, I told someone the other day, I'm like, even if they don't wait till marriage, if people that listen to this podcast don't wait till marriage, maybe they just wait one more date because they say, you know what, he might be right, or I see
Hmm.
some value in this. And in that time that they waited that one more date longer than they usually waited, they find out that that girl's crazy or that guy's a jerk, and they avoid years of time with them or a pregnancy or whatever. That to me is still a win. So that's really what I'm trying to do is help people the mistakes that I made because I didn't understand this stuff. No one taught it to me. It was only through, trial and error that I was able to figure it out.
Yeah. So so you make all of these great points, and I think one of the interesting things about your story is that the fact that you did live it. I mean, you talk about being from both spectrums where you claim to be a reformed bad boy, and I like that. I like that thought, and you talk in your biography a little bit about how your encounter with Christ and how that changed you. Can you walk us through that, the couple of days leading up to that point and the couple of days after, and just that transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to tell you the whole story and actually about a nonprofit that I started. I'm wearing the shirt, shameless plug.
Yeah.
But I was 27 years old. I was the biggest stripper in Baltimore. I was in the phone book, worked for every entertainment agency in town. I was also the biggest promoter at the time. I was running nightlife in Baltimore and, making a lot of money. I was very popular. I had a lot of girls, and I liked being me. I really did. And, when I was, just to preface this, my uncle put me in Christian schools a couple of years when I was young, and I went to Christian camp. I raised my hand, prayed the sinner's prayer as a kid. But in all honesty, I never had heard God's voice or felt His presence before. So when I became an adult, I just didn't know if it was real. I would see people pray, and I would wonder to myself, I don't know if anybody's really listening. So again, my God was pleasure. I
Mhm.
did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, and when I was 27, I was in Cancun, Mexico with a group of friends partying like a rock star. And I woke up one morning and God called me. And I wasn't an audible voice, but it was completely unmistakable. And He said, trust me, I have a plan for you. And I did the most radical 180 a person can do. I literally left Cancun the next day, flew home, quit promoting, quit stripping, broke up with my girlfriend, was abstinent for the next 6 years. So think about
Wow.
that for a second. Yeah. For
Wow.
going from being the most promiscuous guy in my town to being abstinent. So it took a hell of a lot of determination. And, at that time I was going to church. I started going to church. I was, learning about God. I really didn't know much about Him at the time. And, I was looking for a group of people to hang out with because I had to cut off all my old friends because they were, still doing the things that I was doing previously. And, I couldn't find a group of people that I really could relate to. Like I didn't relate to church people, to be honest.
Hmm.
I thought, I love the things that I was learning, but I didn't relate to them. They were a little strange or they just, we weren't the same people, I felt like. And so I found myself staying at home alone a lot or going to the movies on the weekends and just, trying to avoid trouble while I waited for God to bring me this girl that He promised. And after, that wait turned into 6 years. And eventually I got so burnt out on it all that I drifted back to the bars because I wanted to be around people again and I wanted to enjoy my life. And I hadn't been. And one by one, I started picking up my old bad habits to the point over the next few years, I literally became pretty much the same person I had been prior to meeting Christ, except I knew better. So it was a lot worse. In 2011, I rededicated my life to God. I got sober a few months later, but I tell people I went through the exact same period for the next year where I literally was staying in my house every night renting Redbox movies by myself because I didn't know what to do or who to do it with. And I was complaining to somebody. I said, I don't know about this abundant life, crap that Jesus talks about, but my life is not abundant. I was like, my life sucks. And they said, well, you were a promoter. Why don't you put some social events together that don't cause you to make mistakes? And that's exactly what I did. It was like a light bulb went off. I started organizing social events purely for selfish reasons, just to give myself something to look forward to, what we call fun without regrets
Yeah.
now. And I was volunteering through my church, starting to like myself again. I realized that healing that I was feeling from serving, from volunteering, that my friends that needed that. My former friends whose lives were starting to fall apart from the bad decisions that they had been making, but I knew that they weren't going to come to the church, outreach or whatever, the church coach
Yeah.
drive. So we started organizing social events, and it turned into what is now City Fam. And really, what we found is when you give people opportunities to socialize in healthy settings, and to have fun, doing the right thing versus doing the wrong thing, because fun with regret is always an option if you don't have fun without regret.
Right.
Uh, and then start giving back of themselves, they change. People literally become a different version of themselves, the best version of themselves when you give them those two things. And we've seen people get out of addictions, drugs, alcohol, sex addiction, break up with a toxic relationship that they've been in, because now all of a sudden they're not thirsty. They have community, they have healthy friendships, they have things to do besides the wrong thing. And then you just see that thing that has a grip on them let go, and they come off of prescription meds, and they'll leave their dead end job and start a business. It's just, and that to me is like, this is what the church used to do. It used to provide people healthy community where they could get over their things, but people don't go to the church anymore. They don't go to the building. So, City Fam isn't faith-based, but for us, we are doing the work of the church in a lot of respects, because we're taking that, all of our principles are founded on Christian principles, but we're taking that out to the places where the people are that need it most, like the bars or the amusement parks or sporting events. And we've really kind of created this ladder where a social event is the first step. And then once you get them here, we take a portion of the money from the social event, we give it to a nonprofit in the community, and then we actually go volunteer for them together. So then people take another step. By the time they get up to here, they're feeling different about themselves. They've made some healthy friendships, and you'll see them walk right up to the third step, which is community, and then they fulfillment, where they become, the best version of themselves, is what we say.
That's awesome.
Probably a longer answer than you wanted.
No, that's all very, very good. So, Why Waiting Works. When did it come out, and how do we get our hands on this book?
So spring of 2018. So I think I have about 5 weeks left, but I think it's going to come out in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
You can go to whywaitingworks.com. You can read excerpts from the book on my website, which is Rob B. Kowalski, and that's Kowalski with an I.com. And I have several blogs up there, and you can get a taste of what the book will be about. Again, it's a very practical standpoint, and I think it'll challenge your beliefs.
Awesome. And how can they get in touch with City Fam?
Cityfam.com is the website. It's CITYFAM. You can see it here on my shirt. And we really have a vision to have these everywhere, because I know that there's people like me and our other members of the group in every city. And, they're either staying at home on the weekends, bored out of their mind, or they're going to the bars and the clubs thinking, well, what's the alternative, right? So now there is. We push the envelope. We have a ton of fun. We have more fun. So back to what we talked about, we have more fun because it's not short-term fun. I say all the time, I'd rather have long-term friends than short-term sex partners, because that's what makes life really rich, is when you have a great group of people around you, inspiring you, encouraging you, supporting you, that you get to do life with. That's really what makes life rich.
That's awesome. Well, good luck with the book. I hope to have you back on maybe after it comes out and I get a chance to read through the whole thing.
I'd love that.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure meeting you and learning about your new book, Why Waiting Works, and also about City Fam. I think that's a great organization, and so congrats on that as well. It's always nice to see people who just take it upon themselves to be true leaders, to step up, see a need, and do it, and be able to overcome, I'm sure, tons of obstacles, setbacks, and still not let those setbacks determine your outcome. I really, really admire that about you, and I really appreciate you sharing the fact you got yourself together, but then you did have a setback. But you know what? That's going to happen, and people that say they never have a setback are lying to you. I mean, so everyone has a setback. So it's just great to see where you've come and how your story is just continuing to motivate and encourage people. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me on. And just again, I got to give all credit to Jesus. it was the calling on my life that gave me the motivation to do the work. He dangled the vision in front of me, helped me see it really clearly. And I was willing to push through the pain once the vision became clear. And then as far as City Fam goes, who knows? Maybe we'll bring it to Evansburg.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Hey, thank you so much, Rob.
Thanks again for having me on.
No problem. Thank you again for watching. This is the 306 podcast. Join us next week as we continue to go through some leadership development kind of themes. And as always, like and subscribe, and we will talk to you next time on the 306 podcast.